Reading this morning comes from a book called The Life of Being, Having, and Doing Enough, written by Wayne Muller. If we can awaken to the blessings of a single day, it will not eliminate our problems or cure our sorrows, but it will help us remember how strong and abundant is our wealth of beauty and grace that we have already been given, even in the midst of whatever difficult trials or challenges we face. Life is not a problem to be solved. It is a gift to be opened. The color of the sky, the song of a bird, a word of kindness, a strain of music, the sun on our face, companionship of friends, the shape of clouds in summer, the red maples in fall. These and 1,000 tiny miracles punctuate a single day in a precious human life. Our scripture reading this morning is from When Jesus heard that John had been arrested, he went back to Galilee. He left Nazareth and settled in Capernaum, a lakeside town near the territory of Zebulun and Naphtali. In this way, the prophecy of Isaiah was fulfilled. Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, the way to the sea on the far side of the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who lived in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. From that time on, Jesus began proclaiming the message, change your hearts and minds, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Would you pray with me? Spirit that flows through all things, ground us in life, in the people around us, in the nature outside, in every breath that we draw. May the words of my mouth, the meditations of each of our hearts, be filled with your wisdom and your light. Amen. So once a month, Julie and I head over to St. Monica's, and we do a 30-minute worship service for it's kind of a lesson in humility because half of them fall asleep on me. Makes me ever so more grateful for all of you. But we have a really good time, and there's some folks that appreciate it. You get to know people as you're there. And we finished this last Thursday, and I was walking around picking up the sheet I had given them to follow along and chit-chatting with some of them. And I got to one woman, and she looked at me and she said, I don't know where I am. It's like and she was very calm about it. It's like I woke up and suddenly I didn't know where I am or what's going on. And I asked her what her name is. She said, what's your name? Do you know who you are? Her name was Sherry. And she said, I grew up in Mondavi. Do you know where Mondavi is? And I said, no. Where's Mondavi? And she said, well, you know. Mondavi. And she said, I just don't understand. She said, I didn't drink anything funny. I didn't take any pills. But I don't know where I am. I said, well, let's see if we can find someone to help you. I said, this is St. Monica's, it's assisted living, yada, yada, you know, room here.
I'll take you and we'll find somebody who can pick up you. And so I let her out of the chapel, and I handed her off into the hands of one of the CNAs who was there, who obviously had encountered this before, and took her in hand and helped her to find her way. I was thinking about that as I read this scripture that I had chosen for today, because it feels sort of like Jesus is that same kind of person who takes us in hand and helps us to get grounded again. Life these days, sometimes I think I wake up and I don't know quite how we got to where we are. Don't know quite what's going on. Confused, lost, frustrated, unsure of what step to take next, where to go, what to do, searching for meaning and truth and solid ground to stand on, and it feels like there's less and less of that. And in the midst of that, perhaps, and certainly times have been like that forever, and we're like that in Jesus' day. And he said to everybody, you have to remember that the essence of all that is in everything and through everything and everyone. It's right here. He said, don't despair, don't lose hope. Just look around, and if you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, you'll know that God is right here, right now, with us in everything. So the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's not something that's, the kingdom of heaven is what beauty and grace and light and hope and joy and compassion. It's nature and it's people and it's art and it's music. It's poetry. It's here, it's at hand. It's not something that's yet to be this kingdom of heaven. It's something that is right now. It's not going to materialize at the end of the ages. Poof, suddenly, it's right here for us to grab hold of, to ground us down, to steady us, and to move us forward. The problem with seeing it is that it's in all the ordinary stuff of life. The essence of all that it is, the presence of the divine, is everywhere. And so we miss it. We forget to see it. And so we feel even more lost and alone. Our spiritual transformation really happens in the commonness of life, in the everyday things that are around us, in the lessons we learn from nature, in the metaphors and the experiences that we have that teach us things. And sometimes it's little things like my encounter with this woman at St. Monica's and how it sort of fit into everything else that was working on, a lesson to learn and a general feeling that's happening, and yet a place to find grounding. Those sorts of lessons and wisdom abound if we'll pay attention. Mark Nepo quotes a Burmese seer, S-E-E-R, a spiritual man, who says that the definition of spirituality is when our inner person is tuned in to the great mysteries and secrets of the world around us. When we are tuned into the mysteries and the secrets that are around us, everywhere around us, in the person sitting next to you, in the music that we play, in the ground beneath our feet. Think about an ordinary thing that you did this morning, that you didn't even think about when you did it. And yet if you reflect on it right now, you can see that there's sacred in it, that there's blessing in that ordinary thing. What came to mind? What did you think of? Electricity. Yeah, the joy of flipping that little switch. And we don't know how much we need it and use it until we don't have it, right? The electricity goes out and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have no air conditioning. Sandy?
Every Sunday morning I feed the birds. So there's spirituality in that because then I sit back and watch them for a little while.
Sure. The birds that you feed in the morning on Sundays, you know, the birds kind of do their thing all week long. They sing their songs and they go about whatever birds do. But in that moment, you were conscious of them and connected to them in a way that maybe, you know, certainly most of the rest of us weren't this morning. What else? The first sip of coffee. Absolutely. Or tea in my case. But, and it's something, you know, oh, I can't start my day without that, right? But if you think deeper, then you're like, okay, I'm not only enjoying the sip of this as I'm present in the moment, but I'm connected to the coffee tree or the bean crew and the grower who picked it and the roaster who roasted it and everyone down the line and the sun and the rain that helped it to grow and all of it is in that one little sip. And we forget. Mike?
Morning workouts, getting that accomplishment in, and knowing that my day can only get better.
Morning workouts, your day can only get better. Okay. But just the conscious connection to your body and
Sure,
how your muscles feel and what it is capable of doing for you.
Right.
A lot of us don't think about our bodies unless they're hurting. And I suppose you were thinking about it because maybe it was hurting. But there's also a testing your limits and an appreciation of what our bodies do and can heal from. Absolutely. Connie?
This time of year, most mornings I have my coffee on the patio. I just sort of wallow in the beauty of the season.
Yeah. So to be able to take that first sip of coffee outside and to just be in nature and the trees and the birds and the flowers, absolutely, we like to do that too. Mark?
Energy from our hands.
I'm sorry, talk real loud.
Energy through our hands.
Energy through your hand. Everything we can do with our hands, right? What an amazing tool. I didn't appreciate how much I needed the index finger of my left hand until I broke it, right? Shirley said a toothbrush. Brushing your teeth. And the appreciation of what our teeth mean to us. And the ability to have fresh water to do that with. And where does that water come from? And how does that connect us to the earth? There's so much just even in that. So you see, all of these little ordinary things are blessings we miss until we start to pay attention. Those ordinary blessings in life. So Kent Nurburgring tells a story. And, hi Alex. You coming in, pal? The blessings of kids. So Kent Nurburgring tells a story about how he was on vacation with his wife and his son. And they were in the desert southwest in New Mexico. And he was driving them home. And it's about 7:30 on a late spring evening. And so the gorgeous sun is starting to set, and it's just this orange blaze in the sky, just lighting up the desert with this beautiful orange color. And he's stuck in a town called Gallup, New Mexico, with his wife asleep beside him and his son asleep in the back seat. Now, Gallup is no more than like a little strip town, but he can't for the life of him find his darn way out of this town. Every turn he takes is ending up at a dead end, and he's getting more and more frustrated. So they've been on this amazing vacation. They went out to see, what is it, Monument Valley? Is that what it's called? With all of the big rock structures and so forth, and all of the high desert beauty. And he said it put him in a place of just wanting to connect to himself spiritually, just wanting to stop and feel the energy and be in that space. And he's like, didn't want to be with his kid and his wife who were like, well, how long till we get there? And where are we going to eat? And where are we going to stop and sleep for the night? And he's like, I just want to be in this spiritual place. And so he's getting more and more frustrated. And then he's stuck in this little town that he can't get out of. He turns another corner and he ends up in a dead end. And he said, cursing everything in the world that seemed to be against him at the moment. He slammed the car into reverse. He turned around, he made one more turn, and he turned right into that blazing orange sunset that just blinded him. So he made his way over to the side of the road, stopped the car, and let his eyes adjust. And in front of him, he saw a lone man sitting in a wheelchair in the middle of this dusty, dry parking lot with, papers blowing around him and little whirlwinds of dust flying up around him. And he just watches this man for a moment, wondering if he needs help. This man is just sitting there in the midst of this hot desert evening with sand whipping everywhere. And he's looking up into the sky, his hands in his lap. And he's just got this beautiful look on his face. And Nurbur's looking at him, trying to figure out what's going on. And then he looks up to see what he's gazing at. And way, way up in the sky, he sees this tiny speck of a kite. And here this man in the wheelchair, he realizes that his hands aren't still in his lap, but they're moving just a little bit. And as they move, this kite, dips and it swoops and then it rises up again. And he said he realizes that this man isn't just flying a kite, he's like an artist, a choreographer, making this kite sing. And he watches him for a little while longer and just moved by the peacefulness of this man and this kite in the middle of this sort of windstorm of sand and paper. And then he put his car in gear and he drove on and he didn't wake his wife or tell her or wake his son. And surprisingly, he found his way to the highway pretty easy after that. But that scene stuck with him. Because he said, here's this man who not only had a beautiful look on his face, but had no legs. Here is this man with this peaceful, amazing look, flying a kite. With an expansive, amazing look on his face. And he said, here he is with all of his limbs, a family in his car, just having had a beautiful vacation, and he's feeling constricted, like he wants to jump out of his skin. Like he's done with his car and his family and the world, he just wants to get out of all of it. He said, it brought him back to his senses, really, in that moment. That ordinary blessing of seeing that man there jarred him back into recognizing the ordinary blessings of his own life. And he carried that picture with him forever and ever. Sometimes we're jarred into remembering that our toothbrush is a blessing, or our electricity is a blessing, or that cup of coffee is a blessing. I don't know if you've ever had that jarring feeling where you just sort of, it's like you wake up and all of a sudden you realize how precious everything is that's around you. All those ordinary blessings. So I imagine many of you are familiar with the book Tuesdays with Morrie, are you? Yes. If it was written by Mitch Albom, and if you're not familiar with the book, it's about a guy named Morrie Schwartz, who was a college professor in the day, but he contracted ALS, which is a nervous system, a progressive nervous system disorder where the nerves in your brain and your spine get all screwed up and can't control your muscles anymore. It's a terminal illness. You just progressively lose control of your muscles until you're gone. Mitch, who wrote the book, had been one of Maury's star students, and they had a close relationship when Mitch had been in college. And they rekindled that relationship when Maury got sick, and ended up spending every Tuesday together for quite a while. And it turned sort of into Maury's last class. So it was the 13th Tuesday that they'd spent together. And Maury had very little capability at this point of his body. He could lift his hand, like waist high off the bed. He couldn't sit up by himself. He couldn't take care of, all of his daily functions by himself. He had horrible coughing fits that sometimes lasted for hours, and often in the middle of the night, so he didn't sleep well. He had a hard time talking. So this time as they sat together, Mitch looked at Maury and he said, "So what would you do if you had one day of perfect health?" 24 hours, Maury said. 24 hours. Maury said, "Well, after I woke up in the morning, I'd do my exercises, and then I'd have breakfast. I'd have a couple of sweet rolls and tea. And then I'd have my friends over for lunch, but I'd have them over one or two at a time so that we could talk. And we could talk about their families and their issues, and we could talk about how much we mean to each other. And then I'd want to go for a walk in a garden with some trees and look at all the colors and see the birds. Just be out in nature like I haven't been able to do in so long. And then we'd go to dinner, and we'd go out for some really delicious pasta, or maybe duck, because I really liked duck." He said, "And then we'd go dancing." He said, "And I would dance with all of the great dance partners out there until I was exhausted. And then I'd go home, and I'd fall into bed, and I would sleep a wonderful night's sleep." And Mitch looked at him and said, "That's it?" And he said, "That's it." And isn't that the point? That in all of those ordinary things he wanted to do, if he could have that perfect health for a day, that they were all simple, commonplace, everyday things that you and I take for granted, but were ordinary blessings for Maury if he could have them again. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. The sacred is around us in all of the little stuff every day. Ordinary blessings that grace us. And as Wayne Miller said, when we remember that they're there, they give us strength to go through the difficulties in life. They ground us in that beauty and that grace. And they don't save us from the stuff we gotta go through, but they give us the strength to go through it. Amen.